everybody, and welcome to the first testing session for the MSCA American Ethanol Truck Series. We're here at one of the new tracks on the schedule, the last track of the season for this next upcoming year, and that is Rochester Speedway. And already we're getting the cars on track. This will be the first testing session for drivers who are either unsponsored single car teams or rookies, and this isn't going to be exactly how the series will undergo the testing sessions all the time. They will be split next time into just two random groups. So right now we see Steven Carmona's number 48 Silverado up onto the racetrack, and this is a pretty fast track. As you can see, a lot of drivers are going to be able to, if they like that kind of fast track style, they're going to really enjoy this one, as it does carry, you can carry a lot of speed through the corners. As we can see, I have a little bit of a, we're gonna see some freezes, but nothing I can really do about that. But one of the drivers whom we're going to be watching is Jonathan King. Another is Ben Crouch. Ben Crouch going from a relatively, I wouldn't say completely successful team, but a team that did relatively well last year. However, he downsized to just one truck, and that'll be his truck in the 03, sponsored by Allison Duramax in that GMC. So he's got a little bit of a different organization going. He actually moved one of those teams into the KC series, so that's going to be another good thing for him. Another team to watch would be the 94 and the 99 of Tib Foster Motorsports. That team is going to be another team, I guess, to watch, because they have seen some pretty decent speed in this, from what I can tell right now, sitting pretty far up, pretty well up on the board. And from what we can tell from their private sessions, the teams get a few private sessions. I believe it's 2 private team sessions before the season starts, and then there's these public testing sessions that the teams are allowed to run when they are available. So from what we can tell, the Tib Foster Motorsports trucks have seen some pretty okay speed. As far as Peter Onjak is concerned, he's going to be one of the rookies. I believe he's a rookie, he just does not have the rookie stripes. A few teams neglected to put the rookie stripes onto the cars, onto the trucks, but one of the drivers who is a rookie is Mitchell Carter in the 4 truck. He has taken over from Russ Kamoski with a new sponsor on that machine, hoping that team can really get a good run out of him, as this team last year was one of the fast teams. The 4 truck, I think, was one of the few drivers actually going for the championship, and Russ Kamoski didn't completely get there, but Mitchell Carter hoping to come back and bring this 4 truck back to the prominence that it had last year. So Napa Carlisle coming on board that race team, and it'll make for a pretty decent run from that truck, as he's had so far he's also had some pretty good speed. Dorellis Motorsports, the only driver who ran part-time and won a race, Stephen Thompson, coming back again in that 55 machine. FVP still on the truck as the main sponsor, and we expect to see him pretty much repeat what he was able to do last year. He was one of the more successful drivers last season as far as part-time drivers is concerned, and that's kind of up to the fact that he's on a pretty decent team, as we can see him coming back down into pit lane, I'm guessing making a little bit of a short run before he wants to get out and do his kind of long run, as we can see him moving down pit lane. A few other trucks going by, as one of them, as we saw right there, was the 77 of Diego Yepes. We'll talk about him a little bit later, as I don't know who we're focusing on yet. And there we go, Jack Porkins in the number 07 truck, running pretty much the same paint scheme that he did on the last two races of last season. However, with a different sponsor on the truck, Allied Van Lines taking over the reins for the sponsorship that DeWalt left behind. However, Stanley staying on as a co-sponsor. Not a main sponsor, but still co-sponsoring the 07 of Jack Porkins. And one of the main things that we'll see from Porkins is just the speed he's able to carry in that 07 truck. He's got a pretty good run going so far, and he's had a few private test sessions with a few of the other drivers in the field. And he was one of the top teams out of those private test sessions. So coming on to these group testing sessions is really going to be the test of whether he can keep up with the rest of the field, or if he's going to be sort of a mid-pack truck. I expect him to be able to be somewhere high mid-pack, and that's kind of where a lot of people have expected the 07 of Porkins to be. He's got a lot of experience in higher series, such as the Copperhead Series and the Pennzoil Pro Series, being, I think this is his second year in the Pennzoil Series, and he's going to be under one of the biggest names in that series, which would be National Racing. So, good things happening for Porkins, and a lot of good things, especially in this series, happening for Porkins, and even so in the Pennzoil Pro Series. And then we also have Jonathan Wong in the 53. He's going to be another rookie driver taking over from Eli Bright, who has left that organization and not come back to the series. A few drivers switching seats, just not having had come back. And Eli Bright was one of those drivers. He did have a pretty big incident in one of the last races of the season in that 53 Casey's Silverado, or not Silverado, I believe Avalanche is what the Jones Motorsports team is using. But he had that incident at Milwaukee where his truck ended up blowing up, and then he ended up getting rear-ended by, I believe, the 22 of Bill Cox, or it was the 80 of Derek Yarworth. One of those two drivers ended up rear-ending him, and he got spun around, bringing out the only yellow, and really changing up the strategy of that race. And that's really how Stephen Thompson was able to pull off that victory. He was able to get out of pit lane first. I think, actually no, he made the pass on the on his teammate on the restart, and that's what gave the 55 the edge at Milwaukee. And just a good race for the 55, but the 53 not so much. Hopefully Jonathan Wong doesn't have that kind of a problem, but obviously problems can happen, especially in a 16 race season that's this long. As we shuffle through the field, Trey Wright, American Motorsports, one of the single car unsponsored teams, not going to be, I assume not going to be one of the fastest drivers, although he's sitting 9th on the board right now. So certain tracks may cater to certain teams, but a lot of these drivers are pretty close together, and some of those unsponsored teams, such as that of Tib Foster Motorsports, as we saw with Logan Cloud and Peter Onjak, but also with just these teams that are single car organizations that may not be up to par against the other teams. We see Jonathan King in the number 26, and he's going to be one of the other rookies that's coming out of the series. He's going to be one of those other rookies that we're going to be watching, especially since he's with Malley Motorsports, and that's going to be one of the bigger teams to come out of the MSCA. Malley Motorsports being one of those big organizations that has shown a lot of promise, but just hasn't been able to really pick up and show what they've had to offer. So another team also switching drivers. Arian Azad, a short part-time bid in the Copperhead Amateur Series, did not go too well as he was in an underfunded ride in that series, but still going to see what he can do in the 61 truck, as the 61 truck was doing pretty well with Dave Kennedy, who was the former driver of that machine. However, going back to whatever series he was in, as we look on, another unsponsored truck. This is kind of a two-driver organization. Brandon Morris and Brady Burkhardt, as we can see, the 555 and the 20 truck are going to be tag teaming together and helping each other out with both of their equipment. So Brady Burkhardt going to be one of the rookie drivers under the rookie banner, but his teammate, since he is in the Copperhead Amateur Series and I believe was in it last year, will not be considered for rookie contention. So that's one of the few things that this series has to cooperate with, is if you're in a higher series and you've been in there for at least a year as a part-timer or are a full-timer in that series, then obviously you're not undergoing rookie status. However, some driver who is a part of those series but not as a driver, Diego Yepes, bringing his TRN Motorsports down here for his own personal driving bid. Not too well off on sponsorship. He needs to get, it looks like he needs to get just a sponsorship from his team to come on board as maybe just like a small main sponsor, but just hasn't been able to get anything done. However, another team that has gotten a lot of sponsorship offers as of recent is the 33 of Josh Joyner Jr. for Rogers Racing, and he's going to be the last on the rookie watch, as we can see. We're going to come to the end of our broadcast of the first session here of testing, and we'll be back with the second part and the second half of your driver's feel.
For nearly 2 decades, RacingJunk.com has been the place for grassroots racers and gearheads to buy, sell, and trade online. From muscle cars to dragsters, road racing to off-road, trailers to transmissions, find it all on Racing Junk. State-of-the-art technology, outstanding mobile experience, and our in-house customer service team helps you find what you're looking for. Racing Junk is also a community for race and performance enthusiasts. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and check out our news and event sections. RacingJunk.com, the world's #1 racing and performance classifieds.
And welcome back to the second half of the testing session here at Rochester Speedway for the American Ethanol Truck Series, as we've got the second field of drivers onto the racetrack. And this is going to be the big field that we're going to be watching here. The major group of drivers, the 25 of Jason Kranz, will actually be the first driver to come out, and he was one of the drivers that was in the hunt for the championship after last season. Rick Witt's going to come out behind him, and this is going to be the field where we should see the most speed. However, the track has warmed up a bit from what it was earlier. The first testing session was kind of early in the day, and the track was fairly cold from over the night. And considering where this track is located in early March, it's definitely going to be a cold day out. But the drivers know exactly what they're doing running here, and the speeds are not going to be as fast due to the cold track temperatures compared to the warmer track temperatures. And I think there was a bit of cloud cover between this first and second session, but this is going to be a test between the drivers who we normally would see up at the front of the field, as we're continuing to watch Jason Kranz in the GMAC number 25 for Dorellis Motorsports. Won, I believe, 2 or 3 races last year, and he's hoping to repeat his success, hopefully win the championship in that number 25 machine. Really a fan of Hendrick Motorsports number 25 team, and is kind of sad that, and in some postseason interviews, it's kind of sad that the 25 team got pretty much booted out of Hendrick Motorsports. So a bit of a shame in his eyes, but not really much you can do as a driver here in a Midwest regional stock car series. However, Bill Cox, one of the drivers who is a former champion of this series, has obviously fallen on a bit of some hard times with his team, with his used to be one friend, but now has 2 friends, as Zachary Fitzgerald has joined up with that organization and his truck. So that's a 3-truck team technically, but it's all owned by the 3 drivers who are driving those trucks. So obviously some big things for that for Rem Auto Racing in the 2264, and now the 15 truck of Zachary Fitzgerald, and that was actually his old number before last season when he got moved to the 23 of Triple T Motorsports. As that was really the only team that would be willing to take him on after that. After what happened in the season prior to that, he didn't have too good of a season. However, another driver, a few swaps like we saw in the last session. Eric Monaco, staying with the same team but switching numbers, has moved to the 24 team, and so Eric Monaco in the number 24 Coca-Cola machine used to be Mountain Dew, but since Mountain Dew has moved their sponsorship over to the 112 of Anneli Whitmer in the Casey Sportsman Series, it's going to be Coca-Cola moving in to help out Thunder Snow Racing with that 24 truck. Winner of the Michigan race and beat out Isaac Nichols by, I believe, 3/100ths of a second, which was probably the closest finish of the year last year. Do we expect to see that kind of a finish this year? I'm not sure. But the drivers are really hoping they can get at least some excitement out of that race, and not be as much of a wreckfest as it was last year, because last year it was definitely not the cleanest race whatsoever. A lot of trucks went home and looked like they had just got done at a race at Daytona or Talladega, so that shows you kind of how some of the drivers feel about the big 2-milers as compared to the Cup drivers, the NASCAR Cup drivers when they go to tracks like Daytona. Another driver who has moved into a ride here from the ASCA is Nathan Lukac. Has taken over the 6 truck from Nick Pericles last year, who was not able to come back this year due to his ties up in the Pennzoil Pro Series. So not able to continue on in the truck series, as he wants to focus more on the Pennzoil Pro Series, which is obviously a pretty good endeavor for that driver. He wants to get in as much of a focus to that series as he can, because he definitely is a threat to win the championship every year up there. But Nathan Lukac was a threat to win the Copperhead Amateur Series championship, and so he's going to be focusing heavily on his Pennzoil Pro Series bid, but it's obviously good to get some experience, and definitely will have that experience here in the American Ethanol Truck Series, although I don't know if it'll be exactly the same experience like, say, Tanya Breyer is getting, as these trucks have been... the rules package has changed from last year to this year, so now they run closer to what the Casey's Series trucks and the Copperhead the Casey Series cars, the Casey Sportsman Series, and the Copperhead Amateur Series run, as these trucks were a bit lower in power, and they ran a little bit, and they have the and they have the different body style, which does change the aerodynamics a little bit between the trucks and the cars, but not completely. When you look at it, they still have a pretty decent aerodynamic signature compared to the Cup cars. So, as we see Tanya Breyer coming into pit lane, we have seen in some of the MSCA's private tests at this track, we have seen some drivers have to navigate between each other when coming in and out of pit lane. As we see Isaac Nichols, we mentioned him when talking about Eric Monaco. Did not win a race last year, but came oh so close again in the Michigan race. Pretty much dominated that race, as that 13 truck was probably in one of the biggest dominating performances that Rogers Racing had seen. And Isaac Nichols, a lot of drivers are looking at him as saying he's going to be one of the top teams, as this guy is going to be one of the top drivers in the field. Which is kind of interesting considering a lot of people were saying that about Tristan Allen last year, but Tristan Allen just not a lot of. I don't know how you could say it, but Tristan Allen just was almost a disappointment compared to how Isaac Nichols performed, and really the whole team didn't do too well in all standing. Considering I think the best driver they had was the 44, and he's no longer going to be in. He's no longer in the organization. I believe that was Justin Zeidel in the 44 truck, and he's no longer even with the team. So that's going to be. It's going to be a big shame for that group of drivers, but a lot of performance updates, I believe, for the Rogers Racing team, and it's definitely going to help them not only in this series, but they have moved into the Casey's. Or not the Casey Series, the Copperhead Amateur Series. They moved from the Casey Series, and Jake Rogers ran his kind of own bid last year, and has moved that team into the Copperhead Amateur Series. Another team that we talked about in the last session, but Aiden Valdez is part of Jones Motorsports. That team is really looking forward to this season, as they've got a kind of a newfound appreciation for what's been going on in that organization. They have sponsorship. They actually did drop a single truck from the roster. It was their part-time truck. However, they still have the 53, their team owner, running in that not the 53, the 59 of Eddie and Jones, still running in the team owner's position for a few races. Richard Fridge, a new driver in the 3 truck for Revolution Racing. I, however, do not remember the name of the driver who was in the 3 truck last season. He ended up, I believe, picking up 2 victories in that 3 truck, but unfortunately was still unable to beat his teammate in the 88 of Mitchell Henderson, and Mitchell Henderson was a big surprise to the field as we look on to his other teammate Kev Shearer, the new truck of Revolution Racing. That truck was actually being prepared if they had gotten a third driver, but they just weren't able to get the third driver. And there we see Mitchell Henderson in the 88 Dogecoin Toyota Tundra. And that truck is your defending champion for this season. And right in front of him, we see Bob Schwepke, one of the drivers who wasn't a threat for the championship, but is going to be considered a big threat for the championship now, as under that hood is a DW Motorsports V8 Ford engine, and that's really going to be the biggest factor in the 334. And not only that, but the 21 of Cesar Chavez, who we saw without sponsorship and was probably one of the worst drivers, actually the worst driver behind, right in front of Lucas Sky. As we saw, he was pretty much, I believe he was dead last in the points and didn't even make more than 2 races last season, so a big step up for Cesar Chavez. And as we also see Colin Denton, new sponsor on the hood, but still keeping with Curtis Wright, who was a sponsor for pretty much half of last season, I believe, after the Iowa race. And speaking of Lucas Sky, he has come back into the season. He's going to be in the 36 truck, which, if Kieran Pangborn would have stayed with Thunder Snow Racing and not left the series, he would have been in the 24, while the 36 would have been Eric Monaco's truck. However, looking forward, Cesar Chavez, and behind him Giovanni Barraza. Barraza getting agree to a deal. No pun intended there, but they were able to agree to a deal for the truck series, as that has been that team's kind of main sponsor throughout pretty much every series so far. And we talked about Zachary Fitzgerald when we were looking over Bill Cox in the 15 voltage battery systems under that number 15 name. Not a well-known company. However, they have been able to provide enough money to give the 15 some sponsorship for this season. So the 15, the 64, and the 22 all going to be teammates, and that's going to be good for Fitzgerald because he knows he has some friends out there now instead of being in the lone Cadillac out on the racetrack. As we continue to look through the field, another driver who actually gained sponsorship from last season, Stuart Gratton in the number 47, did not have any sponsorship last year. Actually, the now defunct Arlan Zed used to be on the quarter panels, or actually no, the side panels of that truck. Obviously now he's got some different sponsorship. There was a few interesting sponsors that he had procured in that 47 truck, but just hasn't been able to get very much out of that until this season. He brings Xfinity Comcast onto that organization. As we continue to look through the field, Alex Tanker in the number 44 machine, another new driver into the series. However, not new as far as the MSC and ASCA is concerned, as he takes over the mantle of the 44 truck. Owner of Tanker Motorsports, and brings that name down into this series. I believe was actually a former driver in the Pennzoil Pro Series before creating Tanker Motorsports, so that is why he's not part of the rookie class. As we continue to watch the field go around the racetrack, but that's going to be it on your coverage here for the first testing session here at Rochester Speedway. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys the next time when we bring the Casey's Cup Series here into Rochester. Thank you guys. I'll see you later.